Welcome to this video tutorial on GUIEgg. GUIEgg is an animated user interface system for the Unity game engine, and today I'll be overviewing how messages are processed and handled using GUIEgg. So one of the problems is does my user interface that I've created in GUIEgg actually go ahead and control what's happening in the scene or give information to, pass data around. Okay, so how this works is it's a three-step process, and we're going to have to tick off each one. Each step's real simple, but it's three steps that you'll need to take. So first of all, this is an empty project. All I've done is import GUIEgg, which can be downloaded from the Unity Asset Store. So that's under Window Asset Store if you need to download it. Once it's downloaded, you'll need to go to a window, GUIEgg, and by clicking on that, you'll get the palette for GUIEgg. I'm going to place it down here so it's ready when we need it. Now in this user interface, I'm going to create three buttons. One's going to be my menu, and two will be buttons within that menu. I'm going to have each of these buttons at their default size, so that's fine. But what I want is each of these buttons to have a particular texture. So we go to Tutorials, Textures, so they can be easily distinguished. I'm going to create on that first button, give it one texture, and that's the default texture. And then the buttons above. So this is at this point we're not setting up the user interface. We're not setting up the events in the user interface, but instead we're just creating a user interface. It's been covered in previous tutorials. But I wanted to show from scratch. There's no magic going on underneath that I haven't explained already. And what I'm going to do is just place those so they're oh, that's our root, so we'll keep that at 50. Let's go to one of the children. I'm going to create basic user interface that's in a straight line. Here we are. Okay, so now we have two buttons in a menu, and we want, when a button is clicked, we want an event to be called. So a function is called somewhere that will control and be able to undertake some function within our game. So at this point we've just created a very simple user interface. So this is how we get the user interface events working. It's a three-step process. First of all, we go to our three buttons. I'm going to select them all, and we go then into events and event listener. So this is an object that will listen to our events. There will be an object in our hierarchy, one object, that will listen to the events. Now it could be one object for each button, or it could be one object for all of them. For showing the principles there, we're just going to create one object for all of them. So we need to put this object in here. So what we're going to do is going to go up to the top for game object. I'm going to create an empty game object. Doesn't have to be anything in particular. I'm going to rename it event listener. And again, I'll select those buttons, and I'm going to drag this listener into there. So now all of these buttons will be able to tell this listener that an event's happened. However, we want each button to give a different event, so we know which button's been pressed. So if we click on the first button, it's this field here that's so important, under action, and this is the second step. So we've completed the first step, that was creating the listener and telling the buttons to talk to the listener. The second step now is to give each button an action, and that distinguishes the button to the listener. It says this is our unique action. So what I'm going to do is, for the first one, I'm going to call this menu clicked. Click on the next button. I'm going to call this blue clicked, and finally on our last person, orange, clicked. So it's a simple text string that makes each of our buttons unique. And finally, the final step in our three-step process is to create on this listener functions that will be called by our buttons. So what we do for that is click on our event listener, as I've done, and then add a component. This is just going to be a new script, and all I'm getting here is current script. So what we'll need to do is add a new script. There we are. I'm going to create a C# script, but the principles are the same. It could be a Visual Basic script. I'm going to call this events. And now we have a script that's on our listener. If we double click on that script, this means we're able to edit our script. I'm just doing this in the standard editor, not Visual Basic, not Visual Studio, but the principles of Visual Studio are almost identical. I'm going to go into this script and I'm going to create a function. In fact, I'll try and get these both up so you can see the connection. So I'm going to click on this button here and see this menu script has been created. And I go into here and I need to create that. Okay, and create a function that relates to that. So now we have a really simple function that's been created on this object that will be called every time the menu is clicked. And just to show it's been called, I'm going to add just a little debug message that says menu. Now you can do that for each of your buttons, and our names were blue and orange. And the log message is going to be the same for each. Different for each one. So we'll know that menu's been clicked, blue's been clicked, and orange has been clicked. So each button will call its own function. Now if I save that, that's our third step completed. So I'm going to close that, get back in here. I've actually got an error that's related to something entirely different. So I'm just going to clear that error. And if I now click play, now we're running. You see if I click on the menu, that function's been called. And if I click on blue or orange, then again the message is being called. So this is the three-step process. Create a listener, give the token action to each of your buttons, and finally create your script on your listener that will listen to events. If these three steps are undertaken, then you can change the code in here to do precisely the action that you want your user interface to undertake. So for instance, many people will call this scene controller or graphical user interface controller, and from this object it will control your scene, your game, from the user interface. So this has been a video tutorial particularly focusing on actions for GUIEgg. More information is at GUIEgg.com, and we've also got my YouTube channel.